Mr. President, thank you very, very much for this interview.
Thank you, Henrique.
Have you ever, in your worst nightmares, imagined something like October 7th, the massacre that happened in Israel?
Not as such, but I would say that growing up as a Jew and Israeli, every so often you have a fear. You learn about the Holocaust, you learn about pogroms of Jews, you learn about the catastrophes that ensued Jews, you learn about the exile of Jews from Spain in 1492 and so forth and so on. So you ask yourself, does history repeat itself in terms of the horrors? And therefore, everything is possible in this region. We know the jihadists are here. We know that they want to take over the entire Middle East. And then they want Europe as next, of course, that they have no mercy, not for Jews and not for Christians, and by the way, not for many Muslims. This we know, but the reality, when it hits your face or when you see on the ground, it's shocking.
And now Israel is invading Gaza. And some people in the world are criticizing Israel because they say the number of civil casualties is very high. Thousands, 15,000, they say. What is your reaction to that?
First of all, we don't necessarily agree with the numbers, and many casualties are by Hamas fire itself, like was the famous hospital case where the fire was shot by Islamic Jihad terrorist organization. And believe me, I'm pained and I'm sorry for every Palestinian casualty. It really, when we care about it. But the issue is, if we have the right to defend ourselves, meaning a hostile, terrorist, atrocious, barbaric, sadistic force walks into our territory, butchers and burns and abducts, kidnaps and chops the heads of our children or our elderly. We have to change the equation, meaning we have to change the direction of the region. That means we have to uproot this terror organization. And they are in people's homes, and they are in mosques, and they are in shops and schools. So we go in, and the battle is fierce. In order to move them out as citizens, the uninvolved citizens, we send millions of leaflets. We call by million phone calls. We send millions of text messages. We tell the people, according to international humanitarian law, move out. We give you the humanitarian corridor, take all your stuff, and make sure that you're safe and sound. And this is exactly what we're doing now in Khan Yunis.
And Israel says that the goal is to destroy Hamas.
The military infrastructure of Hamas, of course.
Is it possible?
The military infrastructure is possible because the Hamas is a military force. It has been supported by Iran and Hezbollah in many, many ways. There's an empire of evil emanating from Tehran, which sends its forks all over the region and the world. We've seen, thank God for the Brazilian security forces who managed to arrest a terrorist group of Hezbollah in Brazil, and it goes all over the world, meaning they're not even shy to operate terror all over the world. And lastly, of course, in the high seas, bringing back piracy. We learned, all of us, that piracy is gone since medieval times, okay? No, piracy is back. The Houthis, the long arm of Iran, is employing total piracy on ships in the high seas simply because they suspect they have to do something with Israel. And it's not.
And let's say that Israel achieves this goal of disarming Gaza, of dismantling the weapons, the military side of Azadin al-Qassam, of Hamas. Who will rule Gaza?
So there are many questions.
Do you foresee an international force, maybe with Arab countries?
There are many ideas. This is one of the ideas, is the idea you just mentioned. It's been discussed in the world arena in depth. One will have to see who is willing to have boots on the ground and be able to force and adjudicate and prevent the regrouping of paramilitary groups, terrorist groups, and jihadists. And then, of course, there's the civilian side. How does one make sure that Gaza recovers, and how do we give hope for the people of Gaza?
Is Israel going to stay in Gaza?
Israel doesn't want to stay in Gaza, but Israel, at least for the foreseeable future in terms of the security needs, to make sure that terror doesn't come back again and give hope to all the forces that will recover Gaza, Israel will have to be involved with all the security arrangements that are necessary. And this is another big thing that is being discussed by the international community.
President Biden said that a renewed Palestinian Authority should be the solution, the end goal solution after this period, this interim period. Do you believe this is possible? Is it possible to bring the Palestinian Authority, a new Palestinian Authority?
I think it's a vital prerequisite, meaning we all know that there's a lot of corruption and incapability of the Palestinian Authority in fighting terror, in managing the affairs. Not that it's totally dysfunctional. I also know that in some things they work, but there will have to be changes. The whole world is talking about it. I was now in the climate conference, COP28 in Dubai. I met so many leaders, they all admit. They say it without us even saying it. They say there are many faults, it has to change. It has to regroup and go through many changes.
Mr. President, the Palestinian issue disappeared in the last years from the international agenda. Suddenly, it comes back with all the strength, and President Biden is systematically speaking about the two-state solution. What do you think about that for the future?
That in order to get to speaking about these ideas and other ideas, one has to first deal with the innate psychological issue here. People are ignoring it. First, deal with the fears of all peoples here. Deal with the fear of an average Israeli who knows that and feels that there's no chance to advance without people making sure, and the world making sure, that he's safe and sound. Or a mother, a child, anybody here. This cannot go on. This is a major trauma of our nation. This is the biggest trauma since the Holocaust. This is something inconceivable. And therefore, nobody who's in his right mind in our country is going to deal with the idea of how do you make a solution, a two-state solution for that matter, without dealing with the most central issue of all, is how do we satisfy the ability of Israelis to live in security? And also Palestinians, for that matter, by the way. I do want the Palestinians to live in peace as well.
Is it a possibility for the future if there is security for Israel?
Absolutely, never say never. If we think big and dream big, it's possible. I spoke with many Latin American leaders in the last few days, bringing the plight of our hostages who are there. There are many, many hostages, Israelis, who have Latin American passports. I met with President Lula in depth in UAE, and it was a very important discussion because I said time and again, you only, if you believe in peace, if you're a humanist, first give me security, but get the hostages out. And he mentioned that he spoke to many leaders in the world about it. And so did many other leaders.
So you don't say no to the two-state solution?
I don't say no to any idea that will supply security to Israel. But I'm honestly saying as somebody who came up and grew up in the political realm from the party that advocated the two-state solution, that it's not feasible and realistic right now until we deal with core issues. I believe that truly Israelis and Palestinians, Jews and Muslims and Christians and all members of all faith in this region deserve better. We could get there. But we have to understand that this attack on Israel had nothing to do with all these questions. It comes from a school of thought in fundamentalist extreme Islam that does not accept Jews, all Christians, or any other nation, that believes only in a fundamental school of, and therefore using jihadist methods of chopping and burning and torturing. There's no way one can have any compromise with these barbaric people.
You met many leaders in COP28, I understand. What do you think about the Secretary General Guterres' declarations about October 7th and about the war in Gaza?
I had many arguments with Secretary General Guterres, and I aired criticism. I spoke to him about it as well. I welcomed his comment last week that finally, he said that the atrocities against women must be inquired. I would expect a much more fair approach by the United Nations and its Secretary General to the entire issue. This atrocity goes way beyond anything imaginable within the rules of the game in family of nations. If you want to keep the post-World War II rules of running the family of nations, this atrocity must be condemned with no ifs and buts, no explanation. All the rest of it is nonsense, and I told him that.
If you would say something to the leader of Hamas, who is now in the tunnels in Khan Yunis, what would you say to him, Henrique Cyermerman?
Israel will always prevail. We will prevail. We are committed and determined.
Jews in the world are really concerned because the rising of anti-Semitism is unprecedented since the World War II. What do you say to them? What do you say about this wave of anti-Semitism?
It means that we're all together in this. It means that the ancient old disease of anti-Semitism never fades away, but it always starts with the Jews. It never ends with the Jews. And I believe that, as opposed to what you mentioned in the Holocaust and World War II, now we have the state of Israel, the nation state of the Jewish people, recognized by the international community. And it is there here to defend them.
Last question. You've been many years in the political arena in Israel, and now you're the head of the state. Is Israel going to restart after this war? Are we going to see an Israel 2.0, a new society after the divisions we had in Israel before the war?
Look, divisions are a natural thing in any society. Each one of our viewers can think about his nation and see that there are divisions. We're a vibrant democracy. That's our strength, not our weakness. We can argue. These are legitimate arguments. But when we are threatened, we are one. We rose up like a lion. We are fighting. The spirit of the nation is immense. The volunteering is huge. Our sons and daughters are all in the army, and we are trying to do good in both in getting the enemy out and rebuilding the nation. I think there will be many good initiatives. Like after any war, you have initiatives that are aimed to change the course. And I think there will be many initiatives and many changes also in the entire public sphere. The way Israel is judged by various compasses, by all sorts of people, before they do that, I just urge them to come here and see for themselves. And we have the full right to protect and defend ourselves. We won't go anywhere. We are here to stay forever. And we are a strong and resilient democracy, and one has to respect it. How come liberal people from all over the world support an organization called Hamas, which is the biggest enemy of LGBTQ, the biggest enemy of liberal values, which doesn't believe in the rule of law or democracy, which doesn't abide by any international norms, which doesn't give the Red Cross the ability to visit the hostages? This is the type of enemy we are dealing with, and therefore everybody has to get out of his head of the hate of Israel and his anti-Semitic feeling. It starts with Israel, but it can impact the entire world. If we weren't here in the Middle East, Europe will be next, and America will be next, and all other nations, because that empire of hate wants to conquer the entire universe.
Thank you very much, sir.